Hello, good morning. Just a little after 4 in the morning here, coffee in hand. You know, there's a lot going on in the world at the moment, what with the disturbing death, or should I say assassination of Charlie Kirk. It does make you stop and think how the world is changing so fast, how so many things around us, even in being a little channel here in YouTube, how even one's own friends are changing. Everything around us is changing. When I first came to the Philippines, there was a feeling of enthusiasm, a feeling of unknown expectations, good expectations, ones where one felt a zest for life. But the more and more I watch many of the other videos that are put up daily, weekly, whatever, just like mine, a thought for the day. There's an undertone there somewhat. It's a very negative approach to things. I mean, I've always said that having a YouTube channel gives you an interest. It gives you an opportunity to, I wouldn't say voice one's opinion, but certainly give a reflection of what life can be like living here in the Philippines. It's very hard to talk about a group of people without somehow maybe treading on a few footprints, few toes, I should say. But it's meant in an effort to try and get one's point across that living with a Filipino is going to be different from that of what you're used to, where you've come from. The women in the West are not like the women in the Philippines. It's very hard to put your finger on it, but maybe the statement that they can be very, maybe naive and somewhat childlike in their approach to things. I think it's not meant as a criticism, but it's meant as a warning to those that use the standard thought of thinking that they've got the answer to everything, thinking that their approach will be the answer to a problem, when in fact it's the complete opposite. You might say someone is being rational or maybe being a little bit, unreasonable, why do they not get the idea of what you're saying? Well, it's quite simple. They're trying to learn what you're saying from a point where it's not their daily language. It's not something that they've grown up with. Yes, they go to school now and they learn English. But again, it's like learning Italian or French. You just playing games with phrases, playing games with trying to get your point off, direction, Gada no, or cosa dici in Italiano. All of these things just are questions, and you'll get an answer which will maybe satisfy you. But when you're talking to a Filipino in a relationship way, you want to know that, first of all, that they understand what you're saying. If you say, "What do you think about this, dear? What's your thoughts?" Of course, we know what we're asking, but they don't. They're a little bit confused and they maybe give you an answer that has no relevance to what you're asking. There's the first sign that things aren't quite as normal as you thought. With friends, there's a tendency more and more now to wonder what friends really are, because I've got friends. I've got friends that I hold dearly. I've got friends that are sort of friends, and they've got acquaintances. And we all think that we're doing fine. But as time goes on, occasionally you find that just little comments that come from them, you wonder, where's that come from? Why does that sound so, I don't know, negative, sarcastic? Is it fun? Is it joking? I wonder. You know, I've got friends who have channels that have YouTube channels, and I thought I got on really well with them. But more and more often, I get comments on my channel that are drawing attention to things like, oh, not very many views from that one, John. And I think to myself, would I do that to his channel? Would I do that to her channel? Of course not. That's irrelevant. Because talking to a camera each day is just that. It's a thought for the day. And often there's an element of the Filipino phenomenon, and that is putting people down. Why is there a need to put people down? I don't understand that. Maybe it's my age. Maybe having comments about your channel does tend to get under one's skin. And I know that the most effective way is just to ignore it. But when it challenges your right to have what is a hobby challenged in the way that it's trying to undermine it, are they then still friends, or are they just becoming a troll? And I suppose really you have to decide whether or not they are. And the best way really, I think, is to talk about it with that person. Ask them, why are they doing these things? Is it maybe you've talked about something that is too close to their own bone, so to speak? I'm sorry if that when I have these conversations with you out there, that some of my so-called friends don't seem too kind towards the content. Now, is that my fault? Or is it maybe their sensitivity? Or maybe my insensitive? Now, I'll give you an example. If you discover somebody through conversation with others is being made a little bit of a mockery, and they're a friend of yours, and you think, well, do I tell him or don't I about this or that? It is a fine line between becoming involved with someone and their personal life and just leaving it alone. Now, circumstances often find that people say after an event, well, I would have told you, but I didn't feel comfortable about it. Well, is that being a good friend, just ignoring something that's clearly out there? In other words, it's being spoken between other so-called friends, gossip. Isn't it better to clear the air and give that person the opportunity to maybe confront it themselves? If in turn they get their nose out of joint because you've suddenly told them something that maybe they already knew, but they didn't really want discussed. That's a very difficult situation to find oneself in. And I suppose I'm ranting on a little bit because I value friends, and when a friend clearly has changed their way, you have to decide whether maybe it's time to move on. Maybe it's time to just let them go, let them do their own thing. And maybe one day they'll realize that they did have a friend in me, but they chose to maybe not recognize being a friend as being a bit of everything, good, bad, and indifferent. So I'd like to think that if my friend is watching, that some of that falls on, you know, a welcomed part of his brain, because it's not nice to have people constantly dig at you when you're not really intending any kind of harm to that person. But by their comments, they're undermining something that's dear to you, and that is, I enjoy my daily thoughts for the day. They give me an opportunity to share them with others. It's not about views, it's not about subscribers. Sure, I'm disappointed that the original channel with 9 something thousand subscribers and a large base of followers is no longer in my possession. And it's also disappointing to see it being used in a way that just doesn't make any sense anymore. If you have that opportunity to have those viewers there, why you then remove everything that created the channel in the first place? It beggars belief in my mind. But never mind, they think they're doing what is right. But I hope that those that enjoy listening to sometimes a bit of gobbledygook, but sometimes maybe it hits a point. Friends need to be friends. We need to stay together. We need to realize that the world is an ugly place out there. And if you gain some kind of knowledge as to what life can be like here in the Philippines, and it certainly is an enjoyable place still for me, even more so now that I'm all up to date with my visas. The future looks great. Sure, there's some bumps ahead, I'm sure, but who knows? Who knows what the future holds? After all, I'm getting on now. So that's my thought for the day. Maybe a bit muddled, but I hope that it gets the point across. We're all trying our best, and we're doing our best the best way we can. Bye now.